to another Ref Brandon and may be doing. Thank you so much for making Ref Brandon. We always greatly appreciate it. Here on this Saturday evening, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Make sure to give the video a like, a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. Share the video on all social media platforms. Tell your friends, tell your family about the channel, and make sure you click that bell so you'll be notified whenever we go live. I was sitting here watching the Indoor Football League, and I don't know if anybody out there has ever watched that or not. No, it's not high school football. No, it's not college football. And no, it's not the NFL, but it is football. And if you've never watched it, for the most part, with a couple of like beady, teeny weeny exceptions, it's the same thing as the Arena Football League. The only real difference you'll see is in the Indoor Football League, just like the Arena Football League, it's 50-yard fields. It's almost a non-stop clock, except for, a minute to go in both halves. But in the Indoor Football League, if you kick off and you kick it through the opposing team's upright, you get 2 points. Outside of that, it's basically the Arena Football League. So a lot of points are scored, but I had to jump on here and take time away from that to talk some college football, because Furman and Anderson kick off the season on Thursday, August 27th. So we are less than 2 weeks away from the start of the 2026 college football season. But earlier this week, I want to say it was Wednesday, but I could be wrong, but earlier in the week, Sporting News released their 20 best college football teams of the last 140 years. So we're going all the way back to 1886. And I wanted to talk about it because, I've mentioned numerous times here on the channel how we are, as a sports society, we are prisoners of the moment. Good evening, Kevron. Glad to have you here. And Mauricio, I think you're new to the channel, but nevertheless, glad to have you here. But we do it in every sport. This is not just a college football fan or football fan. It's everybody. If you watch basketball, every time a great player comes along, within 2 years, he's the greatest of all time. Every time you see a good quarterback, he's the greatest of all time. And every time we see a great pitcher in baseball, he's the best pitcher of all time. We do that in all sports, but this list is another prime example of how we are prisoners of it. The moment. Now, this is not a top 10 countdown, so I'm not going to go from 10 to 1. I'm actually going to list all 20 teams, starting at 1, going down to 20, and then I'll tell you a few problems I have with the list, which will explain why I say we're prisoners of the moment. But I want to say, if I counted correctly, Sporting News had 12 guys that were in on this voting of the 20 best college football teams since 1886. Number 1, the 1995 Nebraska Cornhuskers. Number 2, the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. Number 3, 2019 LSU. Number 4, 2005 Texas. Number 5, 2004 USC. Number 6, 1971 Nebraska. Number 7, 1972 USC. Number 8, 1974, Oklahoma. Number 9, Alabama from 2009. Number 10, Indiana. Number 18, Clemson. Number 12, 22, Georgia. Number 13, 1979, Alabama. Number 14, 1968, Ohio State. Hey there, Aztec. Glad to have you here on this Saturday evening. And Aztec, if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. Please give the video a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. 1956, Oklahoma. Number 16, 1988, Notre Dame. Number 17, 2020, Alabama. Number 18, 1987, Miami. Number 19, 1944, Army. And number 20, 1991, Miami. And thank you for subscribing, Aztec. I greatly appreciate that. Tonight's video is about college football, as you can tell, but I also discuss NFL, discuss NASCAR, wrestling, baseball, basketball, and then usually on Wednesday, the top 10 countdown, and sometimes they're not about sports or wrestling in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But a few problems with the list. One is being, again, prisoners of the moment. It's way too much emphasis on the current teams, and nothing me that, you know, some of the old teams weren't impressive and shouldn't be higher. You know, now I never have been the type to do the, hey, could this team from this year beat this team from this year? Because first of all, there's no way to prove who's right and wrong, so you're wasting your time on an argument that nobody can win because those teams can't play, so you'll never know who would be right and wrong. So arguing about it's dumb and stupid and pointless and a waste of time. But second of all, you know, you don't know. But obviously, nobody's going to know because they're never going to play. But if you think this team's better than this team, and somebody else thinks this team's better than this team, obviously when you argue, the one guy that likes the old school team is not going to, and the one guy that likes the new school team is not going to change, and nobody can be right, so it's dumb and stupid. But also, football has changed so much. One of the funniest stories I've ever heard was Buck Bellew was talking about being the quarterback, you know, back in the 80s for Georgia when they had Herschel Walker. And he said Vince Dooley got mad one day because Buck either missed practice or was late to practice or was fooling around or something like that. And Vince Dooley told him, hey, son, you're not going to get the playbook. And he said, Coach, it's going to be Herschel to the left, Herschel to the right, and Herschel up the middle. What am I going to miss? And he really, for the most part, yeah, that's a funny comment, funny statement. Right, and that's all Georgia did back in those days. But if you go back and watch old school football, that's about what every team did. So when you have teams that are primarily running teams that are using up every second of the play clock on every snap, and then you've got modern day teams that are primarily passing teams that try to run 90 plays a game, you know, most of the time in the shotgun, and you snap the ball within 10 seconds, well, it's a completely different play style. So there's no way who would win between an old school team and a new school team. You're never going to know. But a lot of people also are, you know, a prisoner of the moment because you can't find a game from 1945. I'm picking a random there and find that, you know, whatever team you're looking for is a highlight from that year. That'll be 15, 20 minutes of all their best plays from that year. But as far as getting on YouTube and typing up 1945 Rhode Island and watching the game, you're not going to find it. So a lot of people don't like talking about those teams because there's no way to know how good they were because you can't watch them outside of the highlight packages. But you can go back and read about them. You can still a lot of times find press clippings and box scores and things like that from games back in those days. So yeah, you didn't see the game and you can't see the game and you weren't alive for the game, but you can still go back and read about it and learn about it. But most people, you don't want to do that because that was 55, 60 years ago. That don't matter. I'm going to live in the moment. The number 19 team on this list, 1944 Army, was one of the greatest football teams ever assembled. They should, at minimum, be top 10, maybe even top 5. Or number 19 is a joke, but most people couldn't tell you anything about that team. So because of that, they're not going to rank them very high. But if memory serves, I believe the 1944 Army team gave up 34 points the entire year. Now, I could be wrong. I believe that's correct, that they gave up 34 points the entire year. And if that doesn't impress you and make you go, wow, then you've got some issues. The second thing is number 9, 2009 Alabama. That's an absolute joke. Now, I know people love Nick Saban, but you got to think, this was Nick Saban pre-offensive days. What I mean by that is by 2009, almost every team was running some sort of up-tempo, fast-paced offense. Meanwhile, Alabama, I believe that year, was Greg McElroy. They're running 50 plays a game, maybe, running the ball every play. McElroy's doing nothing. Good evening, Eddie. Glad to have you here on this Saturday evening. And if you think Clemson won the national championship over Alabama 44-16, which could have been worse, if you think that was bad, I think if any other team on this list that's a modern-day team that runs a spread-type offense played 2009 Bama, they beat them by 20 points. This list is undoubtedly too high. That team was and it was only a couple years after that where Nick Saban came out and said, hey, we need to stop running up-tempo offense. It's bad for the game. The reality was he didn't think it was bad for the game. It's just the fact that he didn't run that kind of offense, and he knew that if he didn't change the rules, he wasn't going to win anymore. Sure enough, found out the rules wasn't going to change. Then he hired Lane Kiffin, and Alabama started running a spread offense. 2009 was pre-spread, and that McElroy team was awful. If they were on my list, they'd probably be top 15, maybe top 10, no. But I do think the only reason that Nebraska, who was a really, really, really good team from 1995, was number 1 instead of the number 2 team, 2001 Miami, is because that 2000 Miami team may honestly be the greatest college football team ever assembled. And I think about 3/4 of their team from 2001 got drafted in the NFL. I mean, it was the easiest coaching job that you ever seen for a head coach because he didn't have to do anything. He had 5-star talent at every position on the field, on the sides of the ball. But I think the reason why they were number 2 is because if you go back and look at that year, now overall in the totality of things, they outscored their opponents like 517 to 116, somewhere along in there. But they had 2 games in a regular season. This is back when they were in the Big East. One of them, I think, was Boston College, and the other one, I believe, was Virginia Tech. And in those 2 games, they won one by, I think, points, and the other one by less than 10, but every other game was a blowout. Whereas 1995, Nebraska beat every team by 145 points. There was no close games. And they were deep at every position in 2001. Eddie, you're right. If I had to tell you the most, I would say teams I've seen that have the most talent in my time of watching college football, with nothing to do with the coach, nothing to do with the scores of the games, nothing to do with who they play, what conference they're in, none of that garbage. just overall, just watching, saying, wow, this team's got talent. I would say the top three teams I've seen with the most talent, where you look at their roster on both sides and say, man, this team can't lose. They've got a 5-star at every single position. The three most teams that kind of talent in no particular order would be the 2001 Miami team, the 2013 Florida State team that won the national championship, and then the 2019 LSU team. Hey there, Invitation. Glad to have you here. Now, Florida State's not on the list because Jimbo Fisher was an idiot, but Florida State had almost the kind of talent that 01 Miami did. That 2013 Florida State team, I think they had 15 or 16 players that year drafted in the NFL draft, and they still had several close games because Jimbo Fisher's an idiot. But just looking at their rosters, like, man, how can a team have this kind of talent? But the top three teams I've seen just with 5-star talent at every spot on both sides and special teams, and you just thought this team can't get beat, would be 01 Miami, 2013 Florida State, and 2019 LSU. But Nebraska beat everybody by 500 points. Miami had those two close games against Boston College and I believe the Hokies, and I think that's why 95 Nebraska was number one. But any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. And let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I've got a friend who has a severe phobia of marriage. So I asked him, do you understand the symptoms? Can't say I do. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref. Life can be over.